Someone in r/homeowners trying to get rid of ants in their house. Tons of comments. One fellow Redditor suggested maybe there were no ants, that they were hallucinations due to carbon monoxide poisoning. OP had his house tested and turns out there were, in fact, no ants and he was hallucinating them due to carbon monoxide poisoning. An IT tech related post. Guy starts a new job as a system admin, no other ID at the place. Previous admin had been there for just about forever and left behind some documentation, but not enough to make the job easy. The guy finds a note from the previous tech with a few miscellaneous tips, and then says if there is a critical emergency and everything else has failed, there is a box in the server room behind the switch, open only as a last resort. Guy is there for a few years, metaphorical fires get fixed, he learns the tricks of the place, but one day the server doesn't boot, tries everything, can't get it to work. All the files are there, the company can function, actual fires are about to start. Guy freaks out and remembers the emergency box and figures now should be an emergency and figures maybe the guy left access info to off-site backups or tape drives or some sort of disaster recovery and goes into the server room. Behind the switch is a box, pulls it out and opens it to find a bottle of tequila. The guy asking for relationship advice because his socks keep disappearing until he finds out his girlfriend is cleaning her poop with it. Stuff hits the fan. OP talks to her sister only to find out sister knows and is now mad at OP for being weirded out by it all. I think they are done, which is sad. OP was thinking about marrying the poop sock chick. The dude who had a girlfriend that struggled to quit smoking. So he decided to take up smoking for a month just so he could show her how easy it is to quit if you are totally dedicated to quitting. He still smokes 10 years later, she quit a long time ago. There was a post about how a guy closed an elevator door on a dad and son. I closed the elevator door on a toddler and his dad. This morning I was on the elevator. It stopped on the second floor and I see a dad and his toddler running for the elevator. I was smiling at them while I held what I think the open door button. They almost made it, but turns out I was holding the close door button. Got so many dirty looks from the people at the elevator. I want to die in shame. There was a post a month or so ago about a girl whose boyfriend kept telling her she smells bad no matter how undeniably good she smelled. Finally he admitted that he was just telling her she smelled bad to keep her self-esteem low enough she wouldn't leave him. Then she immediately dumped him. What's worse is the boyfriend admitted that his own father was the one who taught him to keep putting down a partner so they'd never leave. I remember one where some guy did some rendering of animation or something for Disney and they paid him a bunch of money to basically do nothing but run some program on his computer. He then for Reddit karma turned a not yet released bit of animation into a meme and Disney found out about it and fired him, so he ended up having to deliver mail. The man who attempted to throw his steak out the window. Last night, my wife's boss from her brand new job invited us over for dinner. On the drive over, my wife reiterated many times to me just how important it was to make a good impression. I scoffed and arrogantly informed my silly wife that I always make good impressions. My wife's boss is a single lady in her 50s, so it was just the three of us. We chit-chatted over drinks and salads and seemed to really be hitting it off. She laughed at my well-timed, perfectly appropriate jokes and my wife seemed pleased. Soon she brought out the main course, a nice big juicy steak for each of us. As I began to cut into my steak, I was discouraged to discover how undercooked this steak was. Now, I've had my fair share of rare steak. I prefer medium, but I can handle rare. This was several minutes on a hot grill short of rare. I probably could have resuscitated the cow had I tried. Instead, I sat there fidgeting with my knife and fork, worrying about how I was going to get away with not eating this steak. Claim veganism? No. I'd already feigned great enthusiasm upon seeing the steak. Just then, our hostess excused herself to the kitchen to take care of some dessert preparations. As I looked across the fancy dining room table at the open window of this third-story apartment, a cartoon light bulb appeared over my head. I knew I had to be decisive, realizing that she could return at any moment. I committed. I grabbed the steak with my hand, gently shook off the juice and executed a perfect throw right through the center of the open window. Here's the big time F-up. The window wasn't open. It was the cleanest freaking window you've ever seen in your life. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed up against it and slowly slid down, leaving a trail of bloody juice in its wake. My wife, whose steak was a nice medium rare and was unaware of my predicament, turned, jaw dropped, and stared at me like I was an alien from another planet. This look then slowly morphed into more of a "there is no place on this planet you can ever hide from me" expression of demonic anger. My wife's boss heard the thud of the steak on window impact and came quickly. She took in the scene, the steak sitting on the windowsill, the blood trail, my empty plate, and then gave me an inquisitive, puzzled look. I just didn't know what to say. It felt like a minute of silence, but was probably 3 or 4 seconds. Finally, the best I could manage was "I'm so sorry. I am such a klutz. I don't know. I was just cutting it. And it slipped. Just ask my wife, I really am a klutz. Right, honey? No help coming from that direction. I will clean this up. I can't believe this. I am so sorry, etc. etc." Both women continued to stare at me like I had escaped from the loony bin. As I smeared the blood around the window with my cloth napkin, dusted off the steak, and continued to mutter my incoherent explanation, I knew no one was buying the story. I knew what I had to do. I sheepishly returned to my seat and proceeded to eat every bite of that disgusting, cold, chewy, bloody, raw steak. I remained pretty quiet the rest of the evening. My wife's only 2 words to me since the incident are "I'm fine." Father who deletes his son's Minecraft world. Am I the butthole for deleting my son's Minecraft world? I have 2 children, a 9-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. My son had a Minecraft world where he built quite an impressive castle on an island, which he was very proud to show to me. Since school was cancelled, he has had issues with waking up on time. He is supposed to wake up at 7 each morning, but for the past month he has been sleeping in until about 9 or 10. I always set an alarm for him, but he sleeps right through it. I don't wake him up because waking himself up is a skill that he needs to learn. I told him about 2 weeks ago that there are going to be consequences for him if he continues to sleep in every morning. At first, he understood and was waking up on time every morning. But for the past week or so, he has fallen back into old habits. I told him yesterday that this is his final warning. Today, he slept in until 11. So I followed through with my warning, and went on the computer and deleted his favorite Minecraft world. I also took away computer privileges for the next month. When I told him, he started screaming and crying. He told me that he spent a whole year working on that world, and he's very distraught that he's never going to see it again. He has been crying and sobbing throughout the day, and has refused to eat any of his meals. The story of Jason in Hell is one of the saddest stories that I have read on the internet. If you guys don't know the story, Jason in Hell was a fellow Reddit user that posted his story regarding his wife's cheating with his neighbor on r/relationship advice. Relationship_advice told him that he will be better off divorcing his wife than to deal with her. A few days later he posts something on legal advice to see how he can secure custody of his 2 children during the divorce. His wife, named Brandy Worley, found the legal advice thread. The same day she found the Reddit post she kills both kids to spite her soon-to-be ex-husband. Brandy then calls 911 telling the operator that she stabbed herself and her 2 children because her husband was divorcing her. The call was recorded with Brandy showing no remorse or emotion during the call. This whole situation was unfolding on Reddit and 4chan. Brandy was given 120 years in prison with the jury saying she doesn't regret her decision one bit. It was a post in Amath Butthole where an Uber driver drove a girl to a restaurant where she was meeting her boyfriend. Before he dropped her off, he gave her a respectful comment, nothing inappropriate and without any bad intentions. He was asking if he was the asshole and the answer was no. The best part happened in the comments section where somebody asked if he was living in a specific city. He replied a little freaked out with yes. Turned out it was the stranger cousin that he gave the compliment to. After he dropped her off at the restaurant, she went inside to meet her boyfriend. However, it wasn't a nice night because he broke up with her. She told her cousin that the compliment that her Uber driver gave her some comfort or made her happy or something like that. The girl and the Uber driver then contacted each other through the cousin. I don't know what happened afterwards. The Kevin answer to an Askreddit question: who's the dumbest person you've ever met? Answer: it's not uncommon as a teacher to have students who are a bit behind the curve in certain aspects, but 99.99999% of the time they are keen on something. They might not understand how to identify a noun or what theme is, but they somehow know how to make a mean plate of nachos. You learn pretty quick to not judge fish for their tree climbing ability, you know? I thought this was the rule when I was teaching until I met Kevin. Kevin isn't his real name, but it doesn't matter because he can't spell it anyway. Kevin was a student of mine during my last year of teaching. He came to my classroom with very little to show for his academic past. He had moved a few times and thus was missing a lot of typical test scores that we used to try and ballpark their ability. Don't worry, it was a ballpark. We didn't make major decisions until we actually had a chance to talk and work with a student for a bit. I thought that's fine. I'll just do some one-on-one with Kevin and see what's up. One-on-one with Kevin was like conversing with someone who'd forgotten everything in a freak, if not impossible, amnesia incident. There was no evidence that he had learned anything past the 2nd grade. And now he was in 9th grade. Flabbergasted, I figured we needed to get more serious with this. If he was going to be in my class, I needed to know why and how. I decided to meet with him, his guidance counselor, his parents, and another teacher to see what was really going on. This is where it all became clear. It was by some incredible fluke that his family hadn't been wiped off the face of the earth years ago. Odds are his entire heritage was based on blind luck and some type of sick divine intervention that saves his family every time a threat presents itself. Kevin was the genetic pinnacle of this null achievement. Even my instructional lead, a woman who could find a redeeming trait in a Balrog, failed to see any reason this kid or his family should be alive today. So here's a list of events that made it abundantly clear that God exists, and he's laughing uncontrollably. Kevin frequently forgot when and where class was. On more than one occasion, I had to retrieve him from other classrooms. Kevin ate an entire 24-pack of crayons, puked, and then did it again the next day. This is 9th grade. I have no idea where he got crayons. Kevin's dad wrote tuition checks and mailed them to me, his English teacher. This was a public school. When I gave it back to Kevin, voided, to give to his dad with a brief note explaining that this is a public school, Kevin got in trouble for trying to spend it at 7-Eleven after school. Kevin was removed from the culinary arts program after leaving a cutting board on the gas stove and starting a fire, twice. Kevin threw his lunch at the school resource officer and tried to run away. He ran into a door and insisted it wasn't him. Kevin stole my phone during class. I called it. It rang. He denied that it was ringing. Not that it wasn't his, not that he did it. No, he denied that the phone was actually ringing. He tried it 3 times before the end of the year. Kevin called the basketball coach a mother effing witch during gym. Basketball tryouts were that afternoon. Kevin tried out. It didn't go well. Kevin's mom could never remember which school he went to. She missed several meetings because she drove to other schools, none of which he ever went to. Kevin tased himself in the neck before a football game. Kevin kept a bottle of orange Kool-Aid in his backpack for about 4 months. He thought it would turn into alcohol. He drank it during homeroom and threw up. Kevin said the N-word a lot. Kevin was white. The high school was 84% black. Kevin got beat up a lot. Kevin stole another student's iPhone and tried to sell it back to them. Kevin didn't understand that his grade was dependent on tests, quizzes, homework, classwork, and participation. Kevin finished his first semester with a 3% average. He tried to bribe me with $11. Kevin spit on a girl and said you should get out of those wet clothes. The girl was the Spanish student teacher. Kevin didn't know dogs and cats were different animals. Kevin tried to download porn onto a computer in the library. At the circulation desk, while he was logged on, Kevin asked a girl to prom. He was in 9th grade and freshmen don't go to prom, by asking for her phone number and then texting her his address. Kevin got gum in his hair, constantly. Kevin regularly tried to cheat on assignments by knocking the pile over, grabbing one before I had picked them all up, and then writing his name on it wherever there was room. Kevin had several allergies, but neither his parents nor he could remember what they were. They were very concerned that, the holiday party, it's high school, we don't have those, would have peanuts. When they finally got a doctor's note, he was allergic to amoxicillin. Kevin and his parents took a trip to Nassau. How the hell did they even get airline tickets? And forgot all their luggage at home. I didn't believe him when he told me until I talked to his mom, who told me first thing when I saw her at the bi-weekly meeting. Kevin's grandfather apparently died in a chainsaw accident. I can only assume God was looking the other way that day. The guy who had an entire alternate life while in a coma. Throwaway account cause this is really personal. My last semester at a certain college I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note he was 325 pounds, I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground I lived a different life. I met a wonderful young lady, she made my heart skip and my face red. I pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends before I finally won her over. After 2 years we got married and almost immediately she bore me a daughter. I had a great job and my wife didn't have to work outside of the house. When my daughter was due, my wife, bore me a son. My son was the joy of my life. I would walk into his room every morning before I left for work and doted on him and my daughter. One day while sitting on the couch I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was still in 3D but just wrong. It was a square lamp base, red with gold trim on 4 legs and a white square shade. I was transfixed. I couldn't look away from it. I stayed up all night staring at it. The next morning I didn't go to work. Something was just not right about that lamp. I stopped eating. I left the couch only to use the bathroom at first. Soon I stopped that too as I wasn't eating or drinking. I stared at the lamp for 3 days before my wife got really worried. She had someone come and try to talk to me. By this time my cognizance was breaking up and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mother's house just before I had my epiphany. The lamp is not real. The house is not real. My wife, my kids. None of that is real. The last 10 years of my life are not real. The lamp started to grow wider and deeper. It was still inverted dimensions. It took up my entire perspective and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, all kinds of weird noises and I became aware of pain. A ton of pain. The first words I said were "I'm missing teeth" and opened my eyes. I was laying on my back on the sidewalk surrounded by people that I didn't know. Lots were freaking out. I was completely confused. At some point a cop scooped me up, dragged me across the sidewalk and grass and threw me face down in the back of a cop car. I was still confused. I was taken to the hospital by the cop. Seems he didn't want to wait for the ambulance to arrive and give CT scans. I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane as I would cry myself to sleep hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually just a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He is perpetually 5 years old and I can never hear what he says.